Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ghost in the Machine here with Victoria Rose. I go by Ghost in the Machine. That's my moniker. And this is one of the main subjects that I'm interested in. It's not really about interest. It's just like thinking about the future of humanity and how sort of all these things are coming together, and it's not for our best interest. And I just think, even though there are a few people that are seeing, how this is coming about, I don't like to be super pessimistic, but I have to just see the facts for where they are, who are the players who are implementing these type of things. And I think techno feudalism, I mean, maybe we can come up with a term over this podcast that would better describe this after we kind of describe the things that are taking place. So I think techno feudalism is good. And I think for those who don't understand what feudalism is, it's kind of relevant to like the founding of, so-called the United States of America, being that, the story, even though if it's a fake ass story, you know what I mean? They were so-called feudalism was real in England, okay? And for those that don't understand what feudalism was, it was the lords and the serfs. You know what I mean? The lords being owners over the land, the serfs being, pretty much the peasants. And I think we have to understand we've already seen sort of this slow rolling effect to where the game hasn't changed. It's actually the same. It's just the titles are different, right? So they're no longer called lords. These are like corporate overlords. You know what I mean? And then we, the public, we're kind of like we're becoming serfs. Now, where the techno comes in, I don't know if that's the proper term, but it's where they're going to implement technology to make this even worse. So I guess maybe the title should be, I don't know, surveillance architecture or techno feudalism and the architecture. I don't know. This kind of falls under one umbrella. You know what I mean? It's a lot to cover. Okay, so we'll start small, right? We'll start somewhere where it seems innocent, right? Like digital ID. The propaganda forces are trying to, do what they always do, and they're going to paint it as a necessity. They're going to get you, the public, you, the serfs, to beg for the digital ID, right? So they're going to create all these fires, you know what I mean, over here and over there, and then they're going to come in like the firefighters, like they're going to put out the fire for you, you know what I mean? So we've heard this digital ID talked about a lot. They've slowly implemented this with the Real ID Act, which I have to have a real ID, right? And I believe as of this year, it seems innocent enough, right? Oh, if you want to board a plane, you got to be a true American citizen. Make sure you're not some, illegal criminal or nothing like that. Then you should have no problem getting a real ID. What's wrong with that? You're not a terrorist, are you? You're not a, illegal immigrant. You're a real American, right? Hence, real ID. And they'll probably come up with some lame ass catchphrase that'll, capture the hearts and minds of, midwits across America, like, a patriotic, the Patriot ID or whatever lame ass shit they want to come up with, right? But the thing about the digital ID, it's not just about boarding planes. It's not just about identifying you as a person. It's how all these, what do they call it? You've heard of the Internet of Things, right, Victoria? A couple years ago, this was a kind of a push. It's the Ring doorbell camera. It's seems
Oh
innocent
yeah.
enough, integrating all of these different things. Your fucking fridge, was it going to be talking to you like the fucking Jetsons? I don't know, right? Introduce these things to you in a certain way, but then it all ties in. So, what is going to be the digital ID? Like, they're going to say during the COVID 1984 hoax, you know, they were talking about, medical information, integrating your medical information into some sort of a identification so that, let's say you was dropping dead from C-19, we got to be able to identify this person. You start to listen to what they were saying with that, and they want everything digitally cataloged, right? But it goes further than that. They're demonizing people on, on the internet or whatever, like the thought police, and they're sitting up there talking about critiquing your thoughts and how you think. You see this happening this year with like so-called prestigious universities, even, you know what I mean? People who are attending Harvard and Yale, schools that I could never get into, right? So it's very telling because you're sitting over there saying you were organizing this right now. they're just saying, okay, if you're not like if you came from a foreign country, then they're basically got the go ahead. They basically got the green light to be able to say, okay, because of the way you're thinking, we're able to deport you. But they're going to push that a little bit further, and they're doing it through monetary means as well. You know what I mean? They did it with the trucker protests in Canada, where they froze your bank accounts. Now, all this stuff, this is old news, 2020. We have biometrics that's been introduced into our society. You know, you have. I even had a workplace that I worked for one time, which I wasn't feeling. Or you see stores popping up in different places where you use your biometrics. You know, whether that be your iris scan, whether that be your fingerprint or whatever. So I personally believe that they'll probably come out with a certain digital ID and then it'll evolve over time. But I don't think it's going to take a long time for it to evolve. You know what I mean? I think it'll either be a real event that they exploit or a false flag event that they manufacture to manufacture consent for something like this. You know, they need right now a 9/11 moment in order to implement all these things that they have ready for the public.
Doesn't this relate to the thing that we saw recently? It's like RFK is trying to create some sort of autism database to like track people have autism. It kind of, I feel like it relates to the digital ID thing.
There's all kinds of things like that, though. You know, you got to look at him too. The thing is, anybody who's this is a separate issue. You know, anybody who's up there once they are compromised, you know, by the powers that be or whatever, they always change their tune. They always start marching to the beat of somebody else's drum, right? So I think that that's relevant. Ultimately, what is this? This is about mass surveillance, right? And I think where it's gonna go is the internet ID, right? So I think that there will be some sort of false flag that's going to encompass all of these things. You know, they're going to pump fear into the midwits of the American public in order to make them acquiesce to their will, right? So how would they do that? I don't know. If I had to take a guess, it could be like maybe not something as big as 9/11, but what are their go-tos of pulling on the heartstrings? You know what I mean? Troops were attacked at a base or something like that, and it'd be too perfect if it was some sort of like a Mexican immigrant or a Muslim, extremist or something like that. And there's going to be a cover story, and how could we have prevented this? If only we had known sooner. You know what I mean? It could be some sort of voter fraud situation. All these things are going to come to a head, and somehow they're going to justify it. But why is this problematic for the average American public? Because it is about mass surveillance and control. This is the surveillance architecture, right? And I believe that they're going to try to also tie this into like an internet ID, right? So once they roll out, the real ID to prove that you're a real American or whatever the fuck, right? Once they do that, because they're gonna have the so-called popular mandate, once they like roll out an incident or something like that, right? Then it'll be, streamed out to the public. Like also tie this into your banking information, your medical information, your internet activity, as if we're not already monitored as it is, but they want to cover all their angles. They don't want no fucking blind spots. You know what I mean? They want to be
Hmm.
able to know how you spend your money, what you're searching,
Hmm.
what books that you're reading. They want full control. And it's not like this notion of like I've never believed this like it's there's not some asshole behind a computer looking at your boring ass life. You know what I mean? It ain't like that. Now that AI has been implemented into this, it is they're going to it's like a mass net, you know? And me and you we had previous conversations about etymology, you know what I mean? What it means, and I've thought about these words like maybe too much because I overthink, you know what I mean? But I think about some of the words that we use, right? Like the internet, internal, inter, net captures you. You understand? So they've been setting up this fucking play for a long time. www.whoopdewhoop.com, right? World Wide Web, yet another web. You know what I mean? So you gotta pay attention to the words because behind words are intention. You understand what I'm saying? All the words, the communication casting, they're casting a spell. broadband, all these words, they have meaning. Kind of going off on a tangent. It's sort of tough because there's so many things. It's something that I've never put out, but I felt this would be appropriate time to like something that I've pondered. And I keep shit to myself because there's a lot of talking about words, right? TikTok, right? A lot of people have become, they're just opening their eyes. They're getting the veil is lifting, right? That's why
Mhm.
TikTok has been useful. Now, back when during Trump's first administration, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but they moved all the data from China under the guise of, we can't have Chinese having your data or whatever. Yeah, okay, that sounds good, but when they brought it over here, who'd you give it to? Oracle, another word that should be concerning, right? The company called Oracle. And what is an oracle? That's somebody who predicts the future. So therefore, they're data mining. They're data mining our data, right? To understand the mind. They're playing God, like if you look at it. Like this is spiritual. You understand what I'm saying? This is very
Mhm.
spiritual. They're playing God. They want to be in your mind. That's why even these companies and their logos and all these things tie in. You understand? So they went ahead and all our TikTok data as of today are running through Oracle and all of their data centers, whether they be in fucking Texas, I believe they're in Texas, maybe over there in Utah, some shit like that. But they're just kicking back. You know what I mean? And again, this isn't a person behind a monitor. They have this is what I think. I'm not coming with no proof. This is just intuition. You know what I mean? This is just understanding how this type of stuff operates, right? Like being that they're using this web, you know what I mean? They're drudging all this information up, right? And they're running it through an algorithm, through a system to put you into a category. I imagine, right? If me and you were in control and we had, these empirical endeavors, right? Would we not utilize the technology that's currently available to do things like this? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I believe that what they're doing likely is probably putting us into different categories, right? Because this isn't like the Census Bureau, right? Where there's this superficial understanding of what you are when you check a box, Hispanic, Latino, white, black, other, whatever the fuck. This is real demography. This is understanding what's inside of you. And the way that they do that is they filter it through this program, you know what I mean, that's able to sort of put you in a cluster group, a thought,
Mhm.
a group of how you think. You know,
Mhm.
there could be, I could be from this region, from a different national background, with a different upbringing than you, but the way that our minds work are a part of like this cluster. You know what I mean? Of course,
Mhm.
there's going to be nuances. Now, they're not worried about the fucking 89%, and that's probably being liberal. That's probably being generous. They're not worried about the 89 or 90 that they're already have captured through their propaganda. But what they're able to do is say they're able to send out all this propaganda, and then they put the input, and then they want to see how effective that was. And they run these systems, and they're saying, all right, we've captured like 89% of the people. We wanted them to believe this way. We wanted them to think this way, whether it be via legacy systems like, the mainstream news or Hollywood or Hollywood stars. You got to look at those as legacy systems. It's not like this hasn't already been taking place. It's just with this sort of technology, it's going to be that on fucking steroids. You know what I mean? Not only are they going to have the output, but they're going to have the instant feedback, and they're going to be able to analyze it. And what's going to happen when they get that information back? Let's say I'm probably being generous. Let's say they're 89% of the people that got it sold up, they got it on lock, right? Okay, they're going to turn around and say, all right, 11% to go. Like they're going to run it through some sort of a probability matrix. You know what I mean? What are their interests? What are they into? And they're going to push a tailored algorithm in order to reach those people based on their hopes, based on their fears, based on maybe their upbringing, religion. You know what I mean? And they're going to tailor it, in order to then they'll probably run it through like I said, a probability matrix and then simulate it. Boom, and then put it out there in the real public, and they'll probably come back with 98% success rate or something like that.